In a quiet coastal town called Seabreeze, where the ocean stretched endlessly into the horizon and gulls traced white arcs across the sky, there lived an elderly man named Thomas Alder. Seabreeze was not the sort of place marked boldly on maps. It was small, weathered, and stitched together by wooden docks, salt-stained cottages, and generations of fishermen who read the tides like scripture. The sea gave life to the town, and sometimes, it took it away. Thomas understood that better than anyone. He lived alone in a modest cottage perched on a rise overlooking the shore. From his window, he could see the skeleton of stone that had defined his entire life, the lighthouse he had been building by hand for nearly 60 years. To strangers, it looked unfinished. To Thomas, it was a promise. When Thomas was 8 years old, he watched his father walk into a storm. His father, Elias Alder, had been the town's lighthouse keeper. A quiet, steady man whose hands were rough from rope and salt but whose voice was gentle as the tide at dusk. The lighthouse of Seabreeze had once stood proudly on a jagged cliff. It was small, aging, but faithful. Its light was the difference between safety and tragedy. One autumn night, the sea rose without warning. The storm came like a living thing, roaring, devouring, tearing boats from moorings and hurling waves against rock with terrifying force. Thomas remembered clinging to his mother's skirt as the wind rattled the shutters. Then came the bell. The distress bell. A ship had struck hidden shoals. Without hesitation, Elias grabbed his oilskin coat. "Stay with your mother," he told Thomas. "I'll help." Thomas had cried. Elias knelt before him. "Your time to help will come. Tonight, mine has." It was the last thing he ever said to his son. Elias reached the lighthouse and managed to relight the failing beacon. The beam cut through rain and darkness just long enough to guide the crippled ship away from certain destruction. But the lighthouse itself could not withstand the fury. A monstrous wave struck the cliffside. By morning, the tower was gone. So was Elias. They found pieces of stone scattered along the shoreline. They never found his body. Thomas's childhood ended that night. In the weeks that followed, grief settled over Seabreeze like fog. The town council spoke of rebuilding the lighthouse. Engineers were consulted. Letters were written to the mainland. But money was scarce, and priorities shifted. Fishing boats needed repair. Homes needed mending. The lighthouse never came. Ships were warned to avoid Seabreeze waters. Trade declined. The town shrank. But Thomas never forgot. At 16, he began walking the shoreline at dawn, studying the rocks. He carried a notebook, sketching designs by lantern light. He read every book on masonry he could borrow. He apprenticed himself to an old stoneworker in a neighboring village. At 20, with shoulders strong and hands calloused, Thomas laid his first stone. He did it alone. The townspeople watched with polite curiosity at first. "It's a noble dream," they would say. But dreams require more than nobility. They require endurance. Thomas chose a new site slightly inland from the destroyed cliff, a steadier foundation. He dug through sand and rock with nothing but shovel and determination. He salvaged stones from the ruins of the old lighthouse. Every stone felt like reclaiming something lost. His routine became sacred. At sunrise, he carried stones from the beach. He mixed mortar by hand. He placed each piece carefully, aligning it with steady precision. He worked through summer heat and winter winds that sliced through bone. Years passed. Friends married. Families grew. Children left for larger cities. Thomas stayed. There were setbacks. Once, a poorly reinforced section collapsed during a violent gale. He rebuilt it without complaint. Another time, vandals from a passing ship mocked him, kicking over tools and laughing at the old fool building castles in the sand. He simply gathered his tools and resumed. The tower rose slowly, agonizingly slowly, but it rose. By the time Thomas turned 50, the lighthouse stood 2 stories tall. But whispers began. He'll never finish. It's too much for one man. Even if he does, who will maintain it? Thomas heard them all. He never answered. Instead, he would say softly to himself as he placed each stone. Every stone counts. It was not merely about masonry. It was about something larger. Every effort, every day, every moment of persistence, they formed the structure of a life. But age was beginning to creep into his bones. His back stiffened in the mornings. His hands trembled in the cold. Some evenings, he would sit at the base of the unfinished tower, staring up at what remained to be done, and wonder if the town had been right. Perhaps it would outlive him unfinished. Still, he returned at dawn. One summer afternoon, when Thomas was nearing 65, he noticed someone watching him. A boy. Thin, sun-browned, perhaps 10 years old. He stood barefoot near the waterline, studying the tower with wide curiosity. "You building a castle?" the boy called out. Thomas chuckled. "Something stronger." The boy approached cautiously. "What is it?" "A lighthouse." The boy tilted his head. "We don't have one." "Not yet." The boy introduced himself as Jack Morgan. His family had moved to Seabreeze after his father found work repairing fishing nets. Jack was restless. The kind of child who asked endless questions and chased answers like gulls chasing wind. He returned the next day. And the next. Soon, he began bringing Thomas water without being asked. Then tools. Then questions. Why round walls? To withstand wind. Why thick at the bottom? To carry weight. Why keep going if it's taking so long? Thomas paused at that one. Because some things are worth finishing. Jack absorbed that answer quietly. Under Thomas's patient guidance, Jack learned. He learned how to mix mortar to the proper consistency, not too wet, not too dry. He learned to feel the weight of a stone and know instinctively where it belonged. More importantly, he learned patience. There were days Jack grew frustrated. "It's barely higher than last month." Thomas smiled. "Look closer." And when Jack examined the walls carefully, he saw smoother lines. Tighter joints. Greater stability. Progress, Thomas would say, is not always loud. The town noticed the boy's dedication. Some still scoffed. "Now there are 2 fools," muttered an old fisherman once. Jack heard. He looked to Thomas for reaction. Thomas simply placed another stone. Jack followed suit. As seasons turned, Jack grew taller. Stronger. The tower reached its 4th level. Thomas began trusting Jack with more responsibility. Entire sections were now shaped by the boy's hands. They worked mostly in silence, comfortable in shared purpose. Sometimes, during breaks, Thomas would speak of his father. Of courage, sacrifice, and the duty to protect others. "Do you ever wish you'd chosen something easier?" Jack asked once. Thomas wiped his brow. "If I had, I would not be myself." Jack carried that sentence in his heart. It happened in late autumn. The air felt wrong that morning, heavy, electric. By afternoon, clouds swallowed the horizon. Fishermen hurried to secure boats. Windows were boarded. Doors barred. The storm warnings came too late. By dusk, the sea was unrecognizable. A writhing mass of fury. Waves towered like mountains. Jack was at home when he realized something that froze his blood. Thomas. He ran. Rain lashed his face. Wind shoved him sideways. The half-finished lighthouse loomed ahead like a defiant monument against chaos. Thomas was there, stubborn as ever, securing scaffolding, reinforcing lantern housing. "You should be home," Jack shouted. Thomas turned, soaked but resolute. "Not yet." Lightning split the sky. Then came the distant, dreadful sound, a ship's horn. Through sheets of rain, they saw it. A cargo vessel, engines failing, drifting toward the shoals that had claimed Thomas's father decades ago. The lighthouse was not fully complete. But it stood. "Help me," Thomas said simply. They climbed. Wind screamed around them. Rain blinded them. The lantern housing was unfinished, glass panels not fully sealed. They worked with desperate urgency. Hands numb. Muscles burning. Thomas nearly slipped once. Jack caught him. "Every stone counts," Thomas shouted over the roar. Together, they sealed the final stone around the lantern base. Thomas handed Jack the torch. "Light it." Jack hesitated only a second before igniting the oil-soaked wick. The flame flickered wildly, then steadied. A beam of golden light cut through blackness. The ship's horn shifted tone, hope. They watched as the vessel altered course, narrowly missing the deadly rocks. Below, townspeople gathered in awe. The lighthouse, finished in the heart of the storm. By morning, the storm had passed. The ship lay safely anchored offshore. Its crew rowed ashore to express gratitude. The townspeople stared at the lighthouse as if seeing it for the first time. It stood tall. Defiant. Beautiful. Thomas descended slowly, exhaustion etched deep into his face. He smiled, not triumphantly, but peacefully. "It's done," he whispered. Jack helped him home. In the weeks that followed, Thomas weakened. His body had given everything it could. One quiet evening, as sunlight painted the sea in gold, Jack sat beside his bed. "Are you afraid?" Jack asked softly. Thomas shook his head. "The light is lit." Those were his last words. He passed that night, peaceful and fulfilled. The town held a memorial beside the lighthouse. For the first time in decades, Seabreeze felt united. They named the lighthouse Alder's beacon. But Jack knew it was more than that. He took on the role of keeper. Each evening, he climbed the spiral stairs, stairs built by hands he had loved, and lit the lantern. Ships began charting Seabreeze again. Trade returned. The town flourished slowly. But more important than prosperity was pride. Jack mentored children just as Thomas had mentored him. He told them stories not just of storms, but of persistence. He would place a stone in their hands and say, "Every stone counts." Years passed. Jack married. Had children. The lighthouse required maintenance, as all meaningful things do. He repaired cracks. Reinforced beams. Upgraded the lantern as technology advanced, but he kept Thomas's original stonework untouched. It was sacred. When Jack grew old, another child, curious, energetic, began visiting. And so the cycle continued. The symbol of Seabreeze. The lighthouse became more than navigation. It became identity. Artists painted it. Writers wrote of it. Lovers met beneath it. Children dared each other to climb its steps. And every storm that came thereafter was met with steady light. Not because storms ceased to exist. But because someone, long ago, chose to build rather than surrender. Long after Thomas's name faded from daily conversation, his lesson remained embedded in stone. Perseverance is not loud. It does not always bring immediate reward. It is built quietly, one decision, one effort, one stone at a time. The lighthouse of Seabreeze stood as proof. Through raging storms and silent nights. Through generations. A beacon born from grief. A tower raised by love. A dream finished in faith. And a reminder that no effort is wasted, because every stone counts.